In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Welcome, friends, to Crime and Punishment, a 100% legal podcast, not a political one. The official podcast of the Invictus Law Firm, PA, a criminal defense law firm in Orlando, Florida. The website for which is augustusinvictus.com. And that is me, yours truly, the host of this program. I always forget to post links, but not today. Today, I actually brought up everything that I need to post, and I'm doing it as we speak. Here is the link to Twitter. You're going to need that. I post all these articles throughout, these articles and more. I publish a lot of articles throughout the week. I post a lot of articles. I'm not the one writing them. I don't have time for that these days. But that's what we talk about on this program. So there's that link. Next is the link for Viral Style, which has some cool stuff. My personal favorite is the Tony Robbins hat that says Invictus. Just think that's amazing. He wore it in an Oprah Winfrey thing years and years ago, like back in the 80s. And then we've got the website, augustusinvictus.com. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can see there, you can join the email list. That's what I'm trying to sell you. Join the email list so that when I do get banned from Twitter or YouTube or both, I can still get a hold of you there. Also brought my Rush Limbaugh papers so that I could make that sound effect while we're doing the program today. So let's leave all that up. Today, this good afternoon, Shovelhead. How's it going? And other guy whose name I can't pronounce. What's up, buddy? So, today the episode is titled Camp of the Saints. For those who don't know, I'm so excited to be the one to tell you what that means. It's a reference to Revelation, of course, the book of Revelation. Side story about that I might get into later, but the reference is to the book of Revelation, but it is the title of a book written by Jean Raspail, a Frenchman who wrote this whole novel about an immigrant invasion. In the novel, it was Indians, and they were on boats, these rickety boats, and they made this convoy from India all the way to Europe, and everybody knew it was coming. You know, there were telegrams, and there were news stories, and there were reports, and there were films of this being broadcast, and everybody knew it was coming, and nobody stopped it. And then, I won't ruin the end of the book for you, but when you see what is happening now in America, it's uncanny. I think the major difference is, in Camp of the Saints, there was like a main character, if you can call it that, like this main, I don't know if you could call him a villain. It's just more like a symbol, like a figurehead of the entire movement coming to Europe. But in America, this just goes on, streaming day after day after day. Millions and millions and millions. It's been going on for years. And there is no figurehead, like no face of this thing. It's just this total invasion at the southern border. And the parallels between that book, which many believe is prophecy, to today are just uncanny. So I would strongly recommend that everybody read that book. Right. We've got these other recommendations. So I was thinking about that. Gates of Fire. So I've read, literally countless books in my life. There are very few novels that I actually like. I'm more of a nonfiction guy. So I've got to pause and answer, Mishi, what is up, man? I haven't seen you in years. Do you think the Native Americans might have felt the same? Yeah, 100%. Yeah, when you're a Native American and you see all these Europeans coming and there's nothing you can do to stop it, yeah. Think of how that must have felt. And we fought a war over it. For 400 years, we fought this American Indian War. 400 years. And it was the the vehemence of our opposition. It was, the viciousness with which they fought. I mean, they were honorable warriors. And that's why we have all of our street names and our schools and our counties and our helicopters and our weaponry and everything in America is named after these warriors, our enemies. Just like the Romans would take the names of the people they had conquered. So we fought this 400-year war to take this country, and look at what we have done with it. That's got to be the most maddening part. There are some Native Americans, obviously I don't speak for the Native American community, so don't cancel me, bro. But there are some Native Americans who point that out and say, we fought this 400-year war, and the white man honored us, and now they're just giving their country away. The country that they stole from us, they're now just handing it over to everybody else in the world. That has to be the most disgusting, the most frustrating part for Native Americans. At least that's how I would feel. So yes, obviously, I can imagine that, Mishi. However, here we are, and we do own this country. So wouldn't the American Indians have fought back? Yes, in fact, they did. For 400 years, like I said, they slaughtered our women and children and gave us hell. So, and mad respect to them. The crazy part now is that white Americans are just like, yeah, you know what? We don't deserve this place anyway. What have we done? We should just all kill ourselves. Like, that's the whole milieu right now. It's insane. That is dishonorable. That is disgusting. Anyway, so speaking of novels, Clockwork Orange was great. American Psycho is great. Blood Meridian's great, and that's probably psychologically telling. These are my favorite novels. I also like The Unbearable Lightness of Being. But, Blood Meridian is also Jocko's favorite novel. So I would highly recommend that. But the one I would recommend above all is Gates of Fire. I really think that might be the greatest novel ever written in human history. Camp of the Saints is more of an historical novelty. It's something that you should read to be culturally literate. But Gates of Fire is just hands down the best novel ever written. I will stand by that. Tim, I didn't even know we had super chats on this channel, buddy. Thank you for that. I had no idea that I was still monetized. I thought that was over because they've shadow banned me for so many years. He says, just binged every Crime and Punishment from beginning over the past few weeks after finding you. Least I could do. Oh my goodness, thank you. We're at episode 92 right now, so I can't imagine what you've been through. So, thanks for that, man. Brian, good afternoon from the East, my man, Florida Treasure. How's it going? Mishi, of course, buddy. Good to hear from you again, man. It's been a long, long time. My email's in the description there if you ever want to talk, buddy. Shovelhead says, Blood Meridian. I love that book. I've read it at least 5 times. 100%. My son, Aiden, asked me the other day, Dad, who's Judge Holden? I'm like, why do you know that name? Have you read the book or not? So, I'm not sure. I don't think he's actually read it, but somebody told him about Judge Holden. But I told him, just read the book, son. Everybody should read Blood Meridian. Ole Warmonger, West the Great. I don't know how to, where your name ends and where it begins, buddy. Nat, what's up? But Warmonger says, read Gates of Fire back in spring of 2007. Recommending reading for development of a warrior mindset. 100%. Spring of 2007 is an interesting time because that was exactly a year after 300 came out in the theaters. Doom Paul says, good evening. Afternoon from the People's Republic of Greece. I was going to say, saying good evening kind of locates you, my man. So, good to hear from you from Greece, man. Greetings from Florida. So, Camp of the Saints. Let's go to the article that inspired that headline. There's lots of articles going on right now. I saw Keith Woods posted a video of a migrant, like an immigrant TikToker. He's got like 300,000 followers, and he's giving advice on how to squat in houses, abandoned houses, and take them over legally. He's advising all of his fellow migrants on how to do this, and he's straight up calling it invasion. He's saying they are here for an invasion. He's working with his African friends to take over all these homes. Like, they're not making any bones about it. It's the NGOs and the leftists, the Democrats who are running this operation. They're the ones who are saying, well, this is an unprecedented crisis and political asylum this and human rights that. Like, this is a straight up invasion. So Texas tried to do something about it. And Texas has made a sticky pickle for everyone by passing this law. Let's just read this. It's from the Texas Tribune. Tribune. Still an ancient Roman mindset. The Texas Tribune. This article is titled, "Enforcing Texas's New Immigration Law May Be Challenging, Even for Authorities That Support It." So, Texas passed this law. It got jammed up in federal courts. I believe it's still under review at the appellate level right now. And they're saying even if the appellate level says, yeah, go for it, they're still going to have a heck of a time trying to enforce it. And my bottom line here, let me Rush Limbaugh this. My bottom line is that Texas is wrong. Legally speaking, Texas is 100% in the wrong. And the Democrats are in the right. The Biden administration is correct that Texas has no authority to do this, that this will create chaos. What was it we read the other week? I think it was the Colorado case. It went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Colorado kicked Trump off the ballot. Went up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court unanimously said, no, you can't do that. Obviously, it would create chaos if every state could kick off a candidate they don't like. Like, that's just common sense. Well, the same thing is true of immigration. Immigration, the federal government is the one sole voice for the entire country on how immigration operates. They have the preemption under the law. They have every right to make and shape immigration policy, every prerogative. It has always historically been the federal government doing this, passing these laws. The problem is, since 1965, since the immigration laws changed, the federal government and everybody supporting these changes have been guilty of treason. That's the problem. And they're trying to put a Band-Aid on this in Texas by saying, well, we're going to make it a misdemeanor for you to cross the border. Doesn't help a bloody thing. Not a bloody thing. And it doesn't change the fact that the federal government is in charge of immigration, whether you like it or not. The solution is, I'll just say it's a federal government solution. I'm not going to get kicked off of YouTube here. So this article is called "Enforcing Texas's New Immigration Law May Be Challenging, Even for the Authorities That Support It." Subheading, "A new law allowing local authorities to deport migrants remains tied up in court. Even if it goes back into effect, logistical challenges could complicate enforcement." Had to get my tea and get into my papers here. Terrell County Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland, what an awesome name, by the way. Thaddeus Cleveland has 54 miles of U.S.-Mexico border in the West Texas jurisdiction he patrols, and 5 deputies. The picture that they're painting here is a lot like that movie The Last Stand with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, these 5 people are just going to stop this criminal wave. Cleveland said he fully supports Texas's new immigration law that will let authorities like him arrest people suspected of illegally entering the state from another country. He also appreciates Operation Lone Star, the state's border security initiative that has given him funds to hire 2 deputies and buy equipment and vehicles. But Cleveland, who served as a Border Patrol agent for 26 years before becoming sheriff of the county where he grew up, must also contemplate reality. His jail can only hold 7 people, he said. The nearest legal points of entry into the country, through which those arrested under the new law would have to be returned in some instances, are hours away. Business as usual here, meaning we have that tool in our tool belt if we need it, Cleveland said of the new law during a phone interview Wednesday that he had to briefly pause to answer a 911 call. But we have a Border Patrol station here that I will more than likely continue to just turn over to our apprehensions to. So, again, they're painting this picture of these 5 cowboys trying to hold back a tidal wave because in real cities, the sheriff of the county obviously does not answer a 911 call. It's hard for somebody who lives in a big city like Orlando or wherever you're from. It's hard to imagine that the sheriff would be answering a 911 call. And that's kind of the picture they're painting here. Like, yeah, Texas can pass this law all they want, but these local border sheriffs ain't going to be able to do nothing. Such may be a common reality in pockets of Texas, in pockets of tech, like little pockets like that, if Senate Bill 4 clears its pending legal challenges. A day after the law went into effect, for roughly 9 hours between conflicting court rulings, glimmers of its next challenge emerged. The logistics of applying the law, which is in uncharted legal territory, for the way it involves state and local authorities in immigration matters, to a land as big and diverse as Texas. Many law enforcement officials support the measure, but major questions persist about how, when, and if local authorities will enforce it. Quote, there's so much that we don't really know what it's even going to look like. We don't have precedent for a state doing this. It kind of changes the game, end quote, said Jamie Longazelle, a political science professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice who wrote a book about a controversial immigration law passed by a Pennsylvania city. Quote, migration is about someone coming from another country, one country into another, and so 2 national governments deal with the question. Now you're having Texas and Mexico deal with this potentially, end quote. And I actually agree. That, legally speaking, that is 100% correct. Politically speaking, that is 100% correct. Imagine the absolute bedlam and madness there would be if San Francisco decided it had its own immigration policy, and Texas had its own, and Orlando had its own, and Tallahassee had its own, and Georgia had its own, and so did Alabama, but Chicago had its own, which was separate from Illinois. It's not, you don't have to go very far into this thought experiment to see that the federal government has to be the one regulating immigration. States and local authorities, counties, cities, they cannot be the ones to do it. Just flat out cannot happen. And even if you're so libertarian that you believe every city should have their own government and their own immigration policy because you're half retarded too, then you have to acknowledge the fact that once they are allowed into, say, Austin, Texas, and they fill that up, they will then go into all of the surrounding cities and towns around Austin, Texas, and those people sure as heck didn't vote for that. Didn't want that immigration policy, and there's nothing they can do about it. Like, think about New York City. What happens when this whole invasion happening right now up there spills over into rural New York? Those people didn't pay for that. They didn't want to pay for that. They didn't want those people in New York City. They certainly don't want them in Troy, or maybe they do want them in Albany, but not in Buffalo. Like, they don't want them in all these other towns. So you cannot have one city-state saying this is our immigration policy, and another state or city or town or county saying, well, this is our immigration policy, because it would be absolute chaos, which is what Texas is really doing, ironically, trying to enforce the federal laws with a state law. They are just handing it over to the people who want chaos in immigration. SB 4 remains temporarily blocked while a federal appeals court weighs a challenge from Texas to a lower court's ruling that struck the law down. The lower court found that the law threatens the fundamental notion that the United States must regulate immigration with one voice. Yeah, I agree with the trial court. I think the appellate court opinion is just a foregone conclusion. And if Texas appeals this as the United States Supreme Court, I don't see it going any other way. The stoppage and conflicting responses from law enforcement in the wake of the law's brief effect Tuesday has done little to reduce concerns that the bill will enable racial profiling and discrimination. Oh no! No one is being arrested under the law, lawyers representing Texas told the federal appeals court panel Wednesday during a hearing. So, interesting that the left's professed concern about this law is that it will allow, people like Thaddeus Cleveland, the local sheriff of a county that has maybe 1,000 people. They're concerned that he will use this law to racially profile people, to discriminate against them, to arrest them on the assumption that they're illegal immigrants, undocumented persons. And that's just plain wrong. Invasions aren't wrong, but God forbid you guess someone's documentation status wrong. The Department of Public Safety, whose troopers patrol the border under Operation Lone Star, may be best equipped to enforce the law. However, DPS has said little beyond court filings about how it will do that. Spokespersons for the agency did not respond to inquiries this week sent by the Texas Tribune via email and phone. The Biden administration and immigrants' rights organizations who sued Texas to stop the law argued that SB 4 is unconstitutional because it interferes with federal immigration laws. Proponents of the law argue it is imperative to do what the federal government refuses to do, enforce immigration law. Unfortunately, both sides are correct. The Biden administration and so-called immigrants' rights organizations, they are correct. SB 4 is unconstitutional, period. It interferes with federal immigration laws. It is unconstitutional. I have never felt more confident saying anything on this program about the law. That is just a black and white issue. However, proponents of the law are also correct. It is imperative to do what the federal government refuses to do, which is enforce immigration law. So how do you solve that sticky pickle? Absolutely not. Jezebel is my witness here. Absolutely not advocating violence on this program. I'm just saying that's the only way to solve this problem. But I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying the law that they passed is 100% unconstitutional. And if you want the federal government to enforce the federal laws, you really have no other outlet. You have no other thing that you can do. There was this one, you're in high school. It's like an American government class. It's like a really obscure document. Thomas Jefferson wrote it.
Common Sense?
That was Thomas Paine.
Okay, that I don't know.
Yeah, see, nobody knows what it was called. The Declaration of Independence. And it said, when you've tried to petition the government over and over and over, and you've tried to have some sort of, some sort of solution here through the legal processes, through voting, through all the usual political processes, there's only one thing left to do.
You said obscure document.
It's so obscure that is my position. It is such an obscure document that clearly no one in America has actually read the bloody thing.
No.
Yes, I will stand by that. If they had, they would know that eventually it has to come to bloodshed. Not that I'm advocating that, God forbid. I'm just speaking as a legal commentator who happens to have read these very obscure documents, and as an amateur historian who has seen empires fall over and over and over, but just in books. This is just a professional observation, okay? I want everybody to know that. So, the law in question, SB 4, the law seeks to make illegally crossing the border a Class B misdemeanor, carrying a punishment of up to 6 months in jail. Wow. That's draconian. A Class B misdemeanor. Yikes. How will they ever recover? Repeat offenders could face a second-degree felony, however. with a punishment of 2 to 20 years in prison. So you get caught the first time, okay, that sucks. You got a misdemeanor. Basically, get out of the country. You come back, now you're looking at prison. Makes sense. Man, that should be what the feds do. But they don't do it. The law also requires state judges to order migrants returned to Mexico. And here's another sticky pickle if they are convicted. Local law enforcement would be responsible for transporting migrants to the border. A judge could drop the charges if a migrant agrees to return to Mexico voluntarily. Makes sense. Very pragmatic solution. Unfortunately, it's also unconstitutional. Representative David Spiller, a Republican from Jacksboro, who co-authored the law, said he expects 95% of the law's enforcement would be within 50 miles of the border. He said he would be shocked if major metropolitan police forces like those in Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio had more than just a few cases. Quote, they shouldn't be going out interrogating people otherwise saying, hey, you look like a migrant. When did you cross and where did you cross? Spiller told the Texas Tribune on Wednesday. Quote, those conversations should not be happening, end quote. Spiller said he understood some sheriffs along the border may be limited in resources, but noted that the law permits an independent magistrate to determine the manner and means in which a person is sent back to Mexico if they voluntarily agree to return. But, and here we get to the pickle, Mexico does not have any plans to cooperate with Texas. That's where it's also important that the federal government has to be the one dealing with the federal government of Mexico. A Mexican federal official said this week the country will not accept repatriations from Texas and will continue to work between federal governments. Quote, it's that there's no precedent, end quote, said Rodolfo Rubio Salas, an immigration professor at El Colegio de Chihuahua in Ciudad Juarez. There's no precedent between Mexico-U.S. relations, nor at the international level, that a country negotiates with a state or entity of another country to carry out these processes, end quote. Already, the prospect of SB 4 going into effect has prompted a variety of responses from law enforcement entities. Hugging the border about 130 miles west of San Antonio, Kinney County was prepared to charge people under the new law, but, quote, it is unlikely observers will see an overnight change, end quote, Sheriff Brad Coey said in a social media post during the short time the law was in effect. He assured officers and deputies would, quote, need probable cause, end quote. In Fort Worth, police officials said that while they always follow the law, the primary responsibility for immigration enforcement and border protection should be left to our federal and state partners. Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan, that can't be right. It's not felon. It looks like felon. Dade Phelan, let's say that, chastised the department and called their message posted in Spanish and English unbelievable. Quote, compliance with state law is not optional. It is mandatory, end quote, Phelan wrote on social media. Quote, any local law enforcement agency that refuses to enforce Senate Bill 4 is abandoning their sworn duty to uphold the rule of law, end quote. True and untrue. Now, when you look at something like what DeSantis has done here in Florida, like the good parts of what he's done here in Florida, and you look at, these prosecutors refusing to enforce the law, saying, we're not going to do that, and he removes the prosecutor from office, yeah, that you can't do that. However, if the law were actually illegal and it were in conflict with federal law, then what prosecutor or what sheriff could enforce that law? At least in good conscience. So I personally, I would disagree with police officials in Fort Worth who say we're not going to do anything about this. Like, at some level, like I said, it comes down to force, and you have to do this. You got to do it because the federal government ain't doing it. On the other hand, legally speaking, Fort Worth police officials are correct. And for Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan to be upset about it, it's like, well, you just don't seem to understand the concept of federalism. And you're in charge of the law here. It is not clear that officers and deputies across the state will take orders from elected officials, since they have their own department's chain of commands, lawyers, and general orders to guide their service. Right? Another reason that it is pure anarchy for Texas to do what it is doing. Because let's say, best case scenario. I mean, absolute best case scenario. All 50 states have sane governors and rebel against the federal government and say, we're all going to enforce the law, right? The state laws, that is. We're going to do what the federal government will not do, and we're going to deport everybody. And nobody else is getting in until we sort this mess out. Absolute best case scenario. Total fantasy world. But let's say that happened. You would still have, within all 50 states, total rogue counties and cities. Like, you would have, the cities of San Francisco and LA, for instance. You would have Austin, Texas. You would have, well, maybe not Miami, actually. Miami's pretty right-wing. But you'd have all these little pockets that are going to say, well, you might disagree with the federal government, what we don't, and we're not enforcing the federal laws. And then it would just be utter chaos. You would have to, at some point, use force. The governors would have to call troops, go in and crush these rebellions. Or they're going to have to rebel against the federal government. Or the federal government's going to have to come in with troops and enforce their non-enforcement of the law. And the fact is, federal government has the prerogative, and if they don't want to enforce it, the only way to hold them accountable is through elections at the federal level. Good luck with that! Those are awesome, our free and fair elections in America. Quote, we intend to advise our members to consult with their local legal counsel for guidance, end quote, said Albert Garcia, president of the Texas Police Chiefs Association, a group that aims to advance the development of police executives. Quote, since Senate Bill 4 grants discretion, it is imperative for each jurisdiction to assess the best course of action based on their unique circumstances, end quote. Which again illustrates the fact that even if Texas gets away with this, which I really am confident they're going to be shut down in federal court, even if they got away with passing this law, the Police Chiefs Association, for God's sake, is saying, yeah, we're not going to get behind this. We're going to let each of these jurisdictions in Texas, I don't know how many counties there are in Texas. There's 67 here in Florida. There's got to be more in Texas because the place is huge. If all of those different counties have their own ideas on what discretion they're going to use and what the law means, and, well, we're not going to send people back. You can send people back, but we're not going to. We're going to be a safe haven. Again, it's pure chaos, which is exactly what the federal government wants in the first place. Some police entities operating hundreds of miles from the border, like sheriffs in Tarrant and Montgomery counties, have indicated they will enforce SB 4. The sheriffs of Tarrant, Collin, and Smith counties met with Abbott Wednesday, as Governor Abbott, Wednesday in the Capitol, and presented him with a letter signed by 139 sheriffs expressing support for the law and arguing, quote, our unsecured border is directly responsible for numerous criminal victimizations of citizens and non-citizens, as well as numerous human rights violations, end quote. Many of those sheriffs were from counties far from the border, where it's less clear how they can make arrests under the law. Skylar Hearn, executive director of the Sheriff's Association of Texas, said it would be impossible for local police to enforce SB 4's illegal entry charge in counties away from the border. The more severe charge for repeat offenders, illegal re-entry, could come into play in non-border counties, Hearn said, though he insisted it would take more than a simple traffic stop. Quote, there's no way to get probable cause on the side of the road, Hearn said. The only way the second offense will ever be filed is someone who was arrested for something else, DWI, burglary, fighting in public, whatever. They go to jail, they're fingerprinted, and that biometric record makes it up to the federal government and then comes back down. That's the only way you can make that case, end quote. The law may potentially give those agencies farther away from the physical border a law with more teeth that could be used strategically. For instance, in a situation where a specific suspect not yet arrested is identified as an undocumented person, said Tyler Owen of the Texas Municipal Police Association, an organization that provides legal services to members who will work in all sorts of law enforcement. Just as tricky as navigating the new law's enforcement will be ensuring that crime victims, who may be undocumented, still feel comfortable reporting those crimes, not avoiding police out of fear, Owen said. Quote, it's going to be a balancing act, and it's going to be something that we're going to have to tread through together, Owen said. Yes, we're cops, but before they're putting that badge on, they're human beings, end quote. What a great line to end on. It's just inspiring. Just inspiring. Before they put that badge on, they're human beings. God bless the thin blue line. God bless America. So that is what's going on in Texas right now. I'm confident it's getting struck down. But I guess we'll see. We'll check in next week and see what's happened. Tim says in Canada, natives rent a home, then never pay rent once and move in a bunch of crack addicts, and it takes sometimes over a year to get them out. Well, I mean, that happens here too, buddy. Even in Florida, drugs are evil, period. I used to be very libertarian about that, anti-drug war. I was so far as to be pro-drug. But the more you see of the real world, the more it is very clear drugs are pure evil. And it happens all the time, man. Happens in Florida. Happens all across the United States. Junkies will take over a house. Good luck getting them out, especially if you don't have a lawyer. Evictions are tough. Especially when human rights are involved. So, redress of grievances. Thank you, Spud Ruckus. That's what I was trying to get at with the Declaration of Independence. Trad Dad says Invictus in rare form today. I don't know. I had a big win, and I've had a few big wins lately in court. I'm kind of killing it these days. So yeah, I'm feeling good. Also, had a huge loss in court earlier this week. Not for my clients, but when Judge Moore refused to remove the Antifa prosecutors from the case in Charlottesville. That was something else. I honestly can't believe that happened. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Corrupt at every level, like I've said before. Spud Ruckus says, good times create soft men. Yeah, and that's where we are at now. The soft men creating bad times. Garfield, racist, listening from Milwaukee, Oregon. What's up, buddy? My son just got a Garfield comic book yesterday. He loves Garfield. So wholesome. I love that he loves those kind of... He loves Peanuts, Charlie Brown, and Snoopy. I never liked those comics. I'm so glad my sons are so wholesome. That's great to see. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, Garfield. So let's see what else we got here. The Biden DOJ slams peaceful pro-life father with FACE Act conviction. Federal appeal anticipated. This guy is looking at 10 years in prison, if I remember correctly. The Thomas More Society, this is where this article is posted. Thomas More Society attorneys are expected to announce that they will appeal the conviction of pro-life advocate Paul Vaughn after prosecution by the Biden Department of Justice for his participation in a peaceful, life-affirming gathering at a Mount Juliet, Tennessee abortion facility. The guilty verdict was announced January 30th, 2024, after a 6-day federal trial at the Fred D. Thompson U.S. Courthouse in Nashville, Tennessee. The case of Paul Vaughn, a devout Christian father of 11, and several other pro-life advocates, has drawn national attention in the wake of the Biden Department of Justice's virulent prosecution of pro-life activists, which began in the months following the United States Supreme Court June 2022 overturn of Roe v. Wade. Well, it seems like lawyers write the articles at the Thomas More Society too. And God bless them. Fully support Thomas More Society. Know some people there, but that is a very wordy paragraph. So this is what happened, right? U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade in June of 2022. Hard to believe that was almost 2 years ago now. So they overturn this, and then the Biden administration just goes full blast. We're prosecuting every Christian pro-life activist that comes near an abortion facility. So they did. They convicted Paul Vaughn. He had a 6-day trial in Tennessee in federal court, found guilty. Immediately following the guilty verdict, the pro-life defendants, along with family and friends, gathered in front of the courthouse to pray and sing hymns together. Convicted along with Vaughn were 5 other defendants. Vaughn and 5 other pro-life advocates were charged with 2 felony counts for their participation in the March 2021 prayer event, witnessing to life at the abortion business about 20 miles outside of Nashville. That's very slanted is not the way. It's very like inside baseball language. Witnessing to life, like that's a Catholic way of saying they're like, you know, they're acting as witnesses for the Catholic faith to, you know, the life of these children. I don't know. I guess I didn't come prepared to like translate Catholic jargon or lingo. In any event, a sentencing hearing has been scheduled for July 2nd. 4 remaining defendants are scheduled to subsequently stand trial for misdemeanor violations of the FACE Act. An additional original defendant turned state's witness and was not prosecuted. We are, of course, disappointed with the outcome, said Steve Crampton, Thomas More Society senior counsel and attorney for Paul Vaughn. Quote, "This was a peaceful demonstration by entirely peaceable citizens, filled with prayer, hymn singing, and worship, oriented toward persuading expecting mothers not to abort their babies. Unfortunately, the Biden Department of Justice decided to characterize Paul Vaughn's peaceful actions as a felony conspiracy against rights to intimidate and punish Paul and other pro-life people and people of faith," end quote. 100% that's what it is. They do that to political activists all the time. It's only not recently, but it's only recently that they've turned it full blast on pro-life activists. Obviously, they've gone after pro-life activists for a long time, but throwing 10 years at somebody for protesting outside an abortion clinic is wild. And obviously, it's to deter everybody else from doing the same thing. It's to deter anyone from going to protest abortion. It's to shut down all pro-life activism. Where have you seen that before? The Thomas More Society legal team pointed to several key factors that the prosecution relied on to leverage their attack against Vaughn. The prosecution relied heavily on a primary witness, Caroline Davis, who participated in and was arrested for the Mount Juliet prayer event with Vaughn, but later turned state's evidence. Again, how many times have you seen that? Throw the book at everybody. Someone will turn. They used it on the mafia. They use it on veterans. They use it on white nationalists. They use it on patriots. They use it on everybody. Everybody they don't like. Throw the book at them. Someone will tell you what you want to hear. True or not, doesn't matter. You will get someone to testify. The government attempted to paint Paul as willfully deceiving the police during the gathering at the Mount Juliet prayer event, despite witness testimony from a police negotiator who testified that Paul had been both helpful, collaborative, and peaceful. The government also attempted to portray Paul as intending to interfere with the operation of the Mount Juliet facility using paper-thin evidence and as a member of a criminal conspiracy despite no evidence of prior knowledge of the event. The government also presented an abortion-determined woman who apparently had scheduled an appointment for an abortion but said she left because of the protesters. Which is the point, right? That's what they're making illegal. They're making it illegal for these people to use their freedom of speech to convince these women not to murder their children. And the Biden administration is saying, no. That's criminal. If a woman wants to murder her child, don't you dare talk her out of it. You do that, you're facing 10 years in prison. Federal attorneys included an abortion business employee who claimed to be, quote, trapped inside the building during the incident, end quote, despite video that showed traffic clearly passing down the hallway to and from the abortion venue. Quote, this is a frustrating setback for Paul, for his family, and for the extended pro-life community, which has rallied support for Paul from the day of his arrest in front of his wife and children by heavily armed FBI agents on through the trial, end quote, observed Crampton. He noted the fact that the persecution of Vaughn and his co-defendants clearly demonstrated the Biden Department of Justice's forceful attempt to silence its ideological opponents. Man, that's like deja vu. Where have we heard that before? Certainly not in America. Quote, the Biden Department of Justice's pattern of arresting and prosecuting peaceful pro-life advocates is disturbing, end quote, shared Crampton, adding that it is especially so when the FBI's pursuit of those who have violently attacked pro-life pregnancy centers has been criticized by some as being less than vigorous. So, never seen selective prosecution before by the FBI either, have we? FBI goes after these people, slams them. They're looking at 10 years because a woman changed her mind about murdering her child. And yet, when actual vandals, actual people actually attack a pro-life center and vandalize it and burn it, well, man, it's hard to find those people. I guess we should focus all our resources on these pro-life activists. Not that the FBI takes sides. The FBI wants nothing more than just to prevent violence, unless it's murdering children. Then you can do that, of course. FBI is fully on board with that. They'll put your opponents in jail if they get in the way of you murdering your kid. But we don't take sides. That's the FBI's official position. An expected appeal in the matter will be filed with the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. The United States of America v. Gallagher was heard before a jury in a trial that began with jury selection on January 23, 2024, and ran through January 30th, 2024, at the United States District Court for the Middle District of Tennessee in Nashville. So, Biden administration, totally in the wrong on basically everything. I don't know, except maybe getting rid of student debt. I actually don't see a problem with that. Someone should do it. But in terms of immigration, totally out of control. In terms of prosecuting people for being pro-life, for praying at abortion clinics, are you kidding me? That's where we're at in America. Trad Dad says you work smart/hard for those victories. Respect. Thank you, brother. And Top Short Long Bottom says arete, which I think might be ariti. I don't know. I might be wrong on my Greek there. But good to see y'all. Got other lawyer stuff to do. Got dad stuff to do. Got to get out of here. We're at time. But we will check in with y'all next week. Scroll up to the website, AugustusInvictus.com. Scroll all the way down there. Join the email list. Go to Emperor Invictus at Twitter. And what's the other thing? Viral Style is also in there. So we can get some of that delicious t-shirt money. Till next week, everybody.